This is the beginning of lesson 8 for project 3, and in this part we're going to create an independent variable for party identification. I've got in front of me the current version of the micro level database. If we page out to the right here, we'll see that we've got our vote score created, so we have our dependent variable now. What we need to do is create our first independent variable, and that's what we're going to do right now. Now, we've already got one measure in here that indicates party, and so really what we're going to do is we're going to take the information available in this variable and create a new one that is dichotomous. But to do that, we need to do a couple things first. The first thing that we need to do is when you're doing dichotomous variables, you always want to set up the dichotomous variable so it creates an intuitive relationship for the reader. And so in this case, we've got support for the bipartisan campaign finance reform project, and what I want to do is I want to see what the partisan breakdown of support was. And so I'm going to go out to that vote view, or go out to the Library of Congress site, and I'm going to go pull my final passage vote and look at it and see how I should do my this party identification. So at the top of this report, you'll see it'll have a breakdown on the basis of party. So Republican, Democrat, and I have one independent, which I'll explain what to do with in a bit. If we look at the eyes of support, the bulk of support for the Reform Act came from Democrats. There were some Republicans, and it was bipartisan, but the bulk of support comes from the Democratic Party. So if I want to create a positive parameter result, again, positive parameters are more intuitive for the reader. If you have negative parameters, it can become confusing in the interpretation. We're good at, our minds are good at doing, okay, if I increase this amount, I'll get this amount of increase on the other one. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. So if I'm going to control dichotomously for party, what I'd want to do is I want to control for Democrats as 1s and Republicans as 0. Going from 0 to 1, a Republican to a Democrat, will result in an increase of support for the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. And that's a very intuitive relationship, and one that the reader can understand and not have to reverse through negative relationships and decreases and everything else. Try to keep your reader going positive increase and a positive increase in your final result. So that tells me what I need to do in terms of my first independent variable. I'm going to set Republicans as 0, or the null category, and I'm going to establish Democrats as 1 as the controlled for category. Now, the final question is, what do I do with the independent? Well, in this case, it's just a single individual, but let's say that I had 10 or 20 or maybe even 30 of these individuals, and I'd want to know what their relationship was for support for this bill. There's a couple ways that I could do this. One I would probably do is I would set up a second dichotomous variable, and I would establish Republicans and Democrats as 0s and the independents as 1, and I would include those into the model as well. What that would do is I would have a variable that would control for the Democratic identifiers, and I'd have a variable that would control for the independent identifiers, or the third party identifiers, and then the uncontrolled for category there would be Republicans. And so I would parse out each chunk of variance using 3 different categories, but only using 2 dichotomous variables. That's a very acceptable manner in which to do it. That would be the proper way to do it. Now, the second way to do this is to actually kind of look at and recode the independents. And so I've got 2 of them here. So I've got one that voted for I, and I got one who voted against. And so they're 2 completely different individuals. And I know this from just kind of general information. The first of these, the one who voted I on it, is this guy, Sanders. It's Bernie Sanders, who is a really liberal progressive person, but he runs as an independent and caucuses with the Democrats, so he should probably be coded as a Democrat. The other one is down here and voted no, and he is Congressman Goody. And Goody's from Virginia, and he was one of these people going through a party change about this time. He left the Democrats and went to the Republicans. And so I think probably the better way, because I don't have enough of these to actually code by themselves, is I'm just going to simply code them into the party in which they caucus with during this period. Okay, so essentially Goody's over here, Bernie's over here. So I'm going to create my codes, and then I'm going to go back and check it. Okay, so let's go back and do this real quick. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to say I want to sort this first of all. So let's click on the thing. Let's go data sort. This gives you the labels as they are, right? And so I'm looking for this party code, which is 100 dem, 200, 300, etc. I'm going to, let me reset this first of all. I'm going to take my party code, and I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to run the sort. And so we'll see. What that does is it puts all the 100s at the top, and I believe those are Democrats. If we go down further, we'll have our 200s, and then we'll have two people at the bottom, which are Vermont Sanders and Virginia Goody. Okay, so we've got our two there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this into the groupings. So I know generally these are 100s and 200s, but let's do one more thing. Let's go and look at the party code sites. And so on VoteView, one of the links I gave to you was the code of parties. So 100, sure enough, is Democrats. 200 constitutes Republicans. And 328 is just simply an independent member. And so those are my codes. In this case, what I want to do is I want to convert 100s to 1s. I want to create 200s to 0s. And I'm going to individually code those two individuals, Sanders and Goody. All right, so let's do the actual coding here and create the new variable. I'm in SPSS again. I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to compute a variable, and I'm going to use a if-then conditional statement to create my new dichotomous variable. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to call this party ID. I'm going to say make party ID equals 1 if a certain condition is included. And so I'm going to say if party code equals 100. So in any of those instances where party equals 100 for Democrats, it'll create a new variable called party ID, and it'll make it a 1. Okay, so quickly we'll click OK. I should be able to go look at my new variable all the way out here to the right. So sure enough, I have party ID. I go down a little bit, and I've got nothing. That's where the 200s come in. Okay, so the next step that I need to do is I need to include or recode the other one. So I'm going to I can do compute variable again, and it'll work the exact same way. I'm just going to say compute 0, and I'm going to say make that 0 if equals 200. It's going to give me a prompt. It's going to say, do you want me to rewrite over this dependent variable or this variable? And I'll say, yeah, it's okay. Change existing variable, sure. I'm just changing those ones on what I made it. So, okay, so now I've got 100s are 1s and 200s are 0s, and then I go all the way down to the bottom, and I've got these two that are wrong. And so to do this last part, let me show you how to kind of manipulate things. Remember, when we're in SPSS, we have data view and we have variable view, and on the variable tab is where you can do certain things such as modify it, right? When we were working with that information, or working with those kind of transform or compute variables, it was working with the labels. You can set up the labels here, and so if you put a label in here, it pops up. So party code 100 equals Dem, 200 equals Republican, 328 equals Independent is just the label that they use, and so that's how I knew what to do. The other thing that you can do is you can change the decimal places, and so maybe I want to make one level, make them 1 decimal places, and so I can just simply do that here, right? Make it 1. Okay. The other thing that I can do is I can delete them. I can right click and clear them. Don't want to do that, but I could if I wanted to. The other thing that I can do is I can move them around, and so I'm going to show you a quick tool. So I'm going to click on the row out here, and I'm just going to click and hold, and I'm going to move this up to party. And when I'm at party, I'm going to go back to this one. So I've got from the beginning, let's go back to the very top, 100s became 1s. When I change to 200s, they go to zeros. So you see that? Go 1 to zeros. And then when I get down to the last one, I'm just going to enter in my 2 codes. The first one is Sanders, and I know he is a Democrat. And Goody is a Republican in name only. All right. Now, I just manually coded these. When you write up your research design, what you'll do there is you'll insert a footnote and say there were 2 independents associated with my sample. In this case, I just coded the independents as according to the party that they caucus with, and so Sanders goes with Democrats, Goody goes with Republicans, and so that's essentially how we're going to control for that. All right. After I'm done doing that, and maybe I want this party ID back where I had it so that I have my dependent variables and independent variables all together, I'll just kind of click it, move it back, and I'm good. And so I'll go up here, and I'm going to just quickly save it. I'm not going to save it as a new version. I'm just going to save it. You can save it in a new version if you want, but I'll just save it under 5, and it'll remain 5. Okay. That is the end of Lesson 8. And in Lesson 8, what we did is we created this party identification variable, and we structured it in such a way that it'll result with positive parameter estimates whenever I run my models later. We know that because, in this case, Democrats were stronger supporters of the BICRA bill than Republicans. So by coding Democrats as 1, I'll return a positive parameter, and positive parameters are easy to interpret. Okay, good.